Welcome to the Ward 6 2023 City Council debate. I'm Tony Shinella, the editor of Concord, New Hampshire Patch. Thank you again for being with us. This debate is sponsored by Patch as well as Concord TV. We're in their great studios here at Concord High School. They've done so far, this is number 11 of our series, and I'm just really so happy and so thankful of the team here that's been able to do such a great job this election season with all kinds of videos. We are also co-sponsored by the New England Take podcast. For the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be talking with one of the two candidates who's running for a 2-year seat in Ward 6. The election will be held on Tuesday, November 7th. He'll get opening and closing statements, and then I'll ask him some questions in between. We did invite the incumbent, Paula McLaughlin, to participate in the event, and she chose not to on multiple occasions to respond to the invitation, so she is not here. Let's meet the Ward 6 candidate who is on the other candidate who's on the ballot. Jay Bellier is here.
Thank you, Tony.
And thank you for being with us. You have a 1-minute opening statement.
Sure. So my name is Jay Bellier. I am a lifelong resident of New Hampshire, and I'm proud to say that I'm a 10-year resident and homeowner in Concord, New Hampshire. I also sit on a local board of trustees, a nonprofit called the Friends Program. And I'm running primarily, there's going to be a lot to learn on the fly. I understand that, and there's a lot of issues that are important to folks in the city. I'm running primarily, I have concerns about, first of all, the level of property taxes in the city, which I think also subsequently, particularly if people own rental property, also creates higher rental. It's creating a lot of drag for homeowners and renters in the city. That's a big concern of mine. Secondly, we have a very obvious concern with, there's a homeless issue in Concord. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed on a couple of different fronts. And I would like to get into that a little bit more later on. And I also just want to make sure that we are addressing the city's infrastructure and the safety around the city, whether it be as simple as sidewalks and crosswalks, or whether it be city structures and so forth. So that's what I'm looking at right now. But I know I've got a lot of learning on the fly to do as well.
Great. You are in financial services. Is that one part you'd like to keep your experience? I don't think there is a financial services person on the city council. So you actually bring a different perspective than a lot of other people on the board now. Can you talk a little bit, without getting into specifics, talk in generalities about your career? Yeah,
so I've in an advisory and a wealth management capacity for about 24 years now. That's been my life for the last quarter of a century. I would like to think that there's a lot of input that I can provide, a lot of insight. I know that my firm, without getting into details around a conflict of interest that I might need to avoid, but I would like to think, and I'm very anxious, regardless of how this campaign goes, to participate on any committees that I think might, my input might be able to help. Yep. So
great. One of the things that will be facing the new city council, there are 15 members, a mayor and 14 city councilors. At least a third, if not more, are going to be new. Mm-hmm. Mayor Boulay is stepping down after almost 26 years, and there may be even more. You could be one of the new city councilors if you're elected. What do you bring to the table to kind of? Well, let me put it this way. So the number of residents are very concerned about instability, especially losing institutional knowledge like the mayor has, as well as a number of city councilors. What kind of things do you bring to the table that you think that would help ensure like that the council is stable in the next 2 years, and that that there's proper proceedings and governance?
Yeah, I do think that it's a good point. In a perfect world, you'd have a sort of a slow rotation in and out, and there's going to be a big turnover. I think that we've had very capable city councilors in Concord. We have very capable candidates right now. And I think as long as people approach it with the understanding that, as I said, in my case, I may have a unique perspective, but at the end of the day, this has got to be something that we're all appreciating each other's input. I know that I've already spoken to a couple of the sitting councilors, and they've been extremely helpful and extremely welcoming. And I think that as long as that we're capable of working together in that capacity, I'm more than willing to understand on day one that I'm going to have shortcomings, and that I need to be open-minded and work with some of my especially my neighboring wards. But I would like to think that it's a little corny, but I like to think we're on the same team, and we all, at the end of the day, we're looking out for the city of Concord.
And in many ways, Ward 4, Ward 7, and Ward 5 are all, surrounding your ward.
Right.
And so you all have bleed over in areas of neighborhoods. And,
Yep.
and so that is definitely going to be something that you're going to want to, even though
Absolutely.
you're elected by the ward, you're always thinking about the whole city.
They've been incredibly welcoming. Even I believe the day after I registered, I was getting calls from city councilors offering to help with whatever they could. I mean, that puts us out in front of it, right on day one. When you got people like that to work with, it's very important. Like I said, I know I'm going to have limitations on day one, just being new to the job, but I'm eager to hit the ground running, and I think that they're willing to work with me.
Sure. You mentioned housing in your opening statement. It's a major issue, but there's also been progress with it here in the city. According to officials, and I've been using the 3,000 new unit number
Right.
from the last 3 to 7 years in planning stages, and it turns out to be like almost dead on correct.
Right.
I missed it by 0.1%. But there's a lot of projects around the city going on. In my mind, that kind of just catches us up to the last 20 years.
Yep.
I don't necessarily know if that's going to be enough. At the same time, there's a range of all kinds of different markets for housing. I was noticing had a conversation with a person the other day. If I were a millionaire moving to Concord, there's only one house that's for sale at $1.1 million. That would
Right.
be, like you would say, a millionaire's house,
Right.
right? Everything else is below that, and a lot of the houses are way overpriced for what they are. So what would you do specifically in the next 2 years if you're elected to tackle some of the housing issues?
Right. I think, and you made a good point that the previous councils have done a lot of the heavy lifting getting these projects underway. We're working at the Steeplegate and down near the Merrimack River, and we've got one in my ward that's going up, a housing unit. It's not quite as large as those. So it is true. I think we're just sort of catching up to where we were supposed to be. So we certainly can't take our foot off the gas. I would be very open to looking at what other areas people feel like could be developed. But it's also very important that this is affordable housing. I can speak for myself that you had mentioned that some of the houses have I thought they peaked 3 years ago, and it turns out that wasn't the case. So as long as we can get some, we need to make sure we have affordable housing. Some of that we don't want to be contributing further to the homeless issue. So we've done. As I said, the previous council has done a lot of heavy lifting, great work. But we can't take our foot off the gas. So I would love to look at other underdeveloped areas in the city where maybe we could look to explore further.
Density too is an issue. You have one of the densest wards in the city.
I sure do.
And it's also one of the most transient wards too. You can tell by the low voter turnout.
Right.
There's a lot of for rent signs. So you have you also have old historic homes. I mean, and Ward 6 has everything. Almost.
Yes.
You have single family homes, you have really expensive homes, you have apartments, you have multifamily dwellings.
Yep.
It really runs the gamut. You're going to be hearing from all kinds of people.
It is.
Facing all kinds of things.
Yeah, and you're going to have, and a lot of the businesses that are in the ward, these owners might not be residents of the ward, let alone Concord itself. And you're right, when you're looking at a ward that has so many rental properties and things like that, and again, maybe the owner doesn't live in the ward either. So it does tend to create a lower turnout. But I think that we have, there's a lot of people in that ward that, that care deeply about who's representing them. So I think that's, we've got to honor them.
Yep. Crime has been an escalating problem in Concord. I use anecdotally an anecdotal example of there used to be about 10 or 15 arrests a week in Concord when I first started Patch. Now there can be 30, sometimes 40, sometimes more than that arrests a week. But crimes that are performed or the crimes that are committed by the homeless population have exploded in the city to the point where about 20% in 2022 were more than 20% were people who were homeless. Some of those things were criminal trespass and warrant arrest, not showing up for court, things like that. But a lot of them weren't. Drug dealing, assaults, arson, and even at least one murder case,
Yep.
One killing case. many people, not necessarily in your ward, but around the city, are having issues with homeless camps going on to their property. Anybody who has more than an acre is finding, they wake up one day and there's people in their backyard. You're going to be the first person that they call before you, get people in touch with them for those types of things. And you're just a volunteer, essentially. What do you think should be done to try and tackle this problem in the next 2 years?
I think that there's two, really obvious issues at hand. We are dealing with criminals, and we are also dealing with mental illness. And I think that they need to be treated. Those have to be segregated, and we can't treat everyone like a criminal. I do think that we want to make certain that particularly our first responders are compensated appropriately, that we have enough police force to handle these issues. But right now, my biggest concern is that it's being addressed, promptly, that it's being addressed quickly. But a lot of these people, we need to seek mental health, for them, seek whether it be hospitalization or treatment or so forth. I also don't want to be in a situation where, again, with the cost of what it costs to live in this city, I don't want to contribute to the homeless cause either. I don't know that that's something that we can avoid. I will say that I am open as far as, I think people have a lot of issues about this. It's a really sensitive subject, and I do have, and I can send it out before we leave. I do have an email address I created for the constituents in my ward if they want to contact me. I don't know if you want me to tell it now, but it's essentially it's Bellier 4 Concord, the number 4. So it's BELYEA 4 Concord at Gmail. I will check that regularly. If anyone has any sort of input they want to provide, or if they feel as maybe they weren't being listened to in the past, shoot me a note. I'll reach out personally. But I don't want to criminalize all the homeless. No one asked to be there. And a lot of times these things come out of desperation. Like you mentioned that some might be, what we would call vagrancy or loitering or even theft. But when we start to get into some of the violent crimes, we're dealing with, potentially criminals.
Yeah. So we have a lot of there's been a lot of violent crime with the homeless. One of the things that's been championed by a number of candidates is tax base expansion, which is going to be needed to deal with the tax rate, keeping the tax rate low.
Right.
Could you give voters in the district in your ward 3 ideas on what you would promote?
I mean, aside from doing a complete and full audit of the city and seeing because as I said, I was raised by a firefighter and a school teacher. I don't want to cut first responders. I don't want to cut educators. I don't want to cut, the police force and so forth. But it's no secret the taxes have been going up very aggressively the last few years. At least that's how I felt. A little bit of sticker shock. So I'm open to the suggestions of, I know some of the other wards the candidates had mentioned what people call a mansion tax and that sort of thing. Again, it's a slippery slope when our number one goal is we're going to target the wealthy. Right. So I think what I would like to look at first, I'm open to that sort of a program. I don't know if it's something that I would necessarily support at the end of the day. I tend to think more that there are areas within the municipality that we can find ways to trim back. I would love to be able to at least slow it down. You can't shut down the city. Nothing's getting less expensive day by day, as we've all seen in the last year. So I would be more inclined to, on day one, I'd really like to start looking at some of the programs throughout the city. And I don't want to eliminate anyone or cost anyone a job, but if there's room there to trim back, and more often than not, I think if you go through any city, you'll find that there's room to trim back. That's really what I'd be looking at. I'm open to all of the other issues that have been brought up. I think it was also suggested that maybe taxing certain businesses at a higher rate or something to that effect. But I think right now I'd like to start with the city itself and just kind of do a run through and see if there's room there to begin. I think that's what's fair.
Zero-based budgeting sometimes works, but it's really coming up with the idea of an audit. It would be interesting to see an audit. I'm thinking right off the top of my head, there's at least three or four vacant lots in your district that I drive by all the time.
Right.
And the one across the street from the Pillsbury building, there used to be the dry cleaner. I mean, that parcel's been empty for at least 10 years now, I think. You've got the house that was just knocked down on South Main Street right before Store Street that they condemned.
Right.
That's vacant there.
Yep.
I mean, like, that is prime real estate.
Right, it is.
Like, why is that vacant?
Right.
So you're right. I mean, having an audit of what, you can't take that person's property, but you can spur them to allow something to be built there.
Right.
Or to sell it if they don't want to do anything.
Yep.
It doesn't do any good for that part. I think about that parcel every time I drove by. They knocked down that house because it was condemned. And it's still, that's like, you can't get better real estate
It's
than
prime,
that
right.
there. It's like,
That's such a great point, Tony.
it's just vacant. All right. One of the discussions that has come up over the past year is having paying for childcare for city councilors, paying for travel expenses for board members, and stipends to attend meetings. And there's been some debate about it. It isn't necessarily for everybody. It's only for some. But just thinking with city councilors, you guys get $1,000 a year right now. Should you get more than that? And if so, how much more?
No, I don't. I think that we are public servants. I don't think that we are, United States congressmen. I don't think there's a lot of financially crippling travel going on. And I'm actually, as I said, I sit on the board of the Friends program. We have an emergency housing shelter in my ward. We have
on Thompson Street, right?
Right.
Yep.
We do a lot with some of the kids in the schools. We do a lot helping the elderly, whether it be shopping. I'm donating mine to that. So to ask me the question, should we get more? Sure,
Yeah.
I'll take it. I mean, but I think that we're public servants at the end of the day, and if there are legitimate expenses that we incur, then that's one thing. But no, I don't think that we need a raise. I don't think it's necessary at all.
Okay. During the past, actually, the mayor and the city council have been pretty good about keeping the tax rate at 3 to 4% annually. It was a little less than 4 last year, for this fiscal year. Where the wackadoodle comes in is the assessments, which
Right.
So I think 3% with an assessment upgrade of $100,000 is much different than 3% 10 years ago.
Exactly.
But which some people don't realize, but. They have a new solid waste contract coming up for fiscal year 2025. The estimated cost of that contract is about the equivalent of 5 to 8%
Yep.
on top of the normal 3%. We had one councilor during the whole time say, that's not necessarily given that there'll be a 12%, but they never have cut the 3 to 4% each
Right.
year. So it's kind of like it's going to probably be a lot
Right.
in 2025. There might be some personal savings with no longer having to buy the purple bags, depending on what they decide to do. But as you said as well, we have some of the highest property taxes right now that are being paid by homeowners and renters indirectly. What would you do to tackle solid waste or keep the tax rate down to the normal perspective with this looming large increase in solid waste costs?
It's a necessary, part of the infrastructure. It would be nice to think that we're going to save this money. It's going to be offset by the purple bags, and we're all going to bank that money that we spent, and it's going to go toward our property taxes. And I just don't know if that's the case. I think that is something that I would really have to dig deeper into, and I do plan on it. When I saw the number of potentially an additional 8%, it sort of made my head spin. It's it's one of those things that I'm hoping that was there was a careful and thorough audit of that, but I would be open to quite honestly researching that a lot deeper. As I said, it's not something we can do without. But if we can find, whether it be in that program or whether it be in others, that we can find a way to at least limit the increase, because we're talking about scary numbers now. So I would be open to researching that deeper and finding out a little bit more about it. That's going to be one of the things that I think I'm going to have to start to to roll up the sleeves and really start to become a student of that whole project.
It's funny because you mentioned sticker shock, and I don't think, and most of the city councilors have said, because since the city council candidates have said, we had a really good deal for 10 years. And it's like, we had a really good deal for 10 years and taxes went up 3 to 4%. And now you're going to have,
Right.
the 3 to 4% and this, we're losing the really good deal. And it's kind of like, I really
Right.
don't think people are kind of, I've asked the same question similar ways, but I don't really think people understand just how huge it's going to be. Okay, so let's talk about Beaver Meadow Golf Course. The recreation department in the city are looking at a new clubhouse for the golf course. They spent about $140,000 redesigning it. There was supposed to be a major tenant, so the project is being scaled. They're going to tweak the design. Some people think it's extravagant to own a golf course, a municipal golf course. Other people look at it as, like the pools and the rec center and all of the other pickleball and everything else. It's just another recreational facility. It has a bunch of different uses. Where do you come down on the golf course clubhouse improvement project?
I think that if we can, at the end of the day, if the course itself can turn a profit, I'm all for it. It does seem extravagant from the outside, but as long as if we can get that, as I said, turning a profit, if we can generate some sort of revenue out of that, then at the end of the day, it's a no-brainer. I know that for the time being, it seems like we have bigger fish to fry than be building what people would perceive as a country club. But as long as we can turn a profit, then as long as it can pay for itself, we can turn a profit. We need revenue.
Yeah.
So whatever it takes, But again, I want to see some of the numbers and go from there. I'm not going to deprive anyone of their golf.
Well, those are all my questions, Jay. You made it through to the end.
I know.
Thank you so much. Why don't you make a closing statement to voters?
Sure.
And we'll call it a day.
As you probably guessed from what Tony just said, I was a little nervous sitting here today. But as I mentioned, I'm a proud 10-year resident of Concord. I love this city. I do feel very strongly that a lot of the issues that we discussed today can be fixed, that we can improve upon it. And I'm really willing to put in the work on day one. I'm going to hit the ground running, and I'm going to work hard for the city of Concord and for Ward 6.
Excellent. He is Jay Bellier, the candidate for Ward 6. Again, the incumbent chose not to respond to multiple requests to participate in this event. Election day is Tuesday, November 7th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Voters in Ward 6 cast ballots at the Christ the King Parish Hall on South Main Street. For Concord TV, Concord Patch, and the New England Take podcast, I'm Tony Shinella. Thanks for being with us.